Gould. Okay. Right. So this is Helen Claire Gould and Colin A. Brett presenting a bit of a live stream discussion with 3 other authors this evening. This is completely off the cuff. So there will probably be lots of mistakes and oh, let's go back and do that bit again. But however, the idea is to talk about these writers' current or past and current projects, and also what you're working on now for the future. So let me just introduce everybody. We have, I'll just introduce Colin because he's our techie person.
Evening all.
Okay, and then we have Debbie Daley.
Hello.
Yeah. And Leanne Rogers.
Hi.
And Nigel Battley.
Good evening, everybody.
Fantastic. And yours truly, Helen Claire Gould. And I'm just going to I just realised I can rename myself. Well, at least I can if I can hit the right thing. Rename Helen. I do like to get that Claire in. Yes, okay. That's great. Okie doke. So, so we have people at a variety of stages. Probably the most experienced author that we have amongst us is Debbie, and because you've had quite a few books published, haven't you?
I've got, well, 5 in total, but 2 are novelettes, really. The other 3 are sort of full novels. And they're all part of a, well, 4 of them are part of a series and 1 is a standalone.
Okay. Is that the one that you're going to read on Sunday?
No, I'm reading an excerpt from the 2nd book in the series.
Oh, right. Okay. That's fab. All right. That's great. So Debbie, can you tell us how you came to be published, first of all?
Well, I wrote the first novel, believe it or not, 20 years ago. And I tried getting an agent, and over a number of years, kind of gave up after a while. Like most authors get knocked back, I started kind of losing a bit of confidence in the story. Well, not in the story. I knew it was a good story, but you kind of question whether it's good enough. And eventually, after about 10 years, a friend persuaded me to get it published onto Kindle, and it did quite well on Kindle. So people were saying, oh, well, I prefer book, I prefer paperback, or I prefer to hold something in my hand that, and turn the pages. So I did think about trying for an agent again and getting, a publisher. Decided to self-publish, and I self-publish with a company called feedereat.com. Because they are supported by the English Arts Council. So I thought, they're a bona fide, decent publisher, and the quality of the books would be good. Excuse me. And so I've been publishing with them for about, I had the first, I think it was 2013, the first book was published. And it wasn't until I really got that one out there that I continued with the story. And now I'm on the 4th book I'm currently writing the 4th book in the series. But I've also got, as I said, a novelette, which is linked to the books, but it's kind of, it's a Christmas story. So it's a kind of, kind of a one-off little Christmas novelette. So yeah, so it's been a long journey. But you know, I love doing it. My husband calls it my philanthropic philanthropic exercise, because I probably spend more money than I actually make from them. But you know, I love doing it, and the feedback I've got from the books, and you know, from right across the globe, you know, that's the nice thing about publishing with Kindle and with FeederRead, in that, you know, the books are available right across the planet, from the UK to the US and Canada. I've got people reading it in Japan and in Australia, so India, yeah, all over the place. So
And the genre is probably young adults fantasy.
it's actually a children. Well, I wrote it for children,
Yeah.
But I had a demographic done on the sales, and my demographic was about, I think the average age was 54. So that was, which was quite interesting. But that possibly is people buying it for their grandchildren or something. But yeah, I mean, I know I've got readers from about the age of 7. I mean, I wrote it for 9 to 12-year-olds, really. But the oldest reader that I know of is 96. And she read the first book and then wrote me a letter and said how much she loved it, and she wanted the second and third book. And I'm going to finish the 4th book. So, you know, it's just really nice to get that kind of feedback from a real broad range of ages.
Yes.
So it's for children of all ages, I say.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, Nigel, you've been writing for a long time, pretty much like all of us, I guess. But
yeah, I have. I first started, I suppose, serious writing would be about 5 years ago now. I was involved in a local community project, which was a historical thing sponsored by the National Lottery, Heritage, and we did a lot of research and stuff with regard to a building in the local village, and we jointly put a book together to actually, obviously, you know, inform everybody about it. One of my other hobbies is genealogy, family history. So I got the role of basically doing the family history of the lady who bequeathed the money in order to have this building built and set up as a school and stuff like that. So I think that was the first time that I'd done any serious writing that was going to end up in print for somebody to read other than me. So yeah, I think that was the first thing, and I really enjoyed doing it. At the same time, I was also doing a degree. So by having to write that as well, I actually found the two different styles of writing very difficult to, you know, to do side by side. But it certainly made me more eloquent in some of the words that I would use and stuff like that, and the phrases and whatever. So so yeah, that was the bug. I'd always liked writing poems, stories, that sort of stuff. But yeah, that got me, that did. So that, I'll say, shortly after that, a little while after that, was how we met, when I came along to some of your workshops, and it's really sort of like gone on from there. I've got several books that I'm nearing completion. The one that is the nearest, I actually did the photo shoot for that, for the front cover, because I do photography and stuff as well. So I'm doing a whole in-house thing myself. I hired a model from London. She came down to Stamford because I needed the old architecture. And I spent a day with her in Stamford 2 weeks ago now, actually, and did 953 photographs in a 4-hour period.
Oh my gosh.
that sounds fabulous, though.
You should get one out of that.
Yeah, so I mean, basically that's, you know, sort of like that one's called Jennifer, and that's my my baby, if you like. That's the one that I really want to get on the shelves first. Yeah. And I mean, I've been over to Cardiff because some of it's based in Wales. I went over to Cardiff. I visited the hotel that some of it's based in, and did quite a bit of filming and stuff in there, so that I make sure I get the details right and everything like that as well. So I've put a lot of work into it. but I'm going down the sort of like self-publishing route, because I also a couple of years ago started a company up, getting obviously very into this publishing and stuff like that. I realised that there's a lot of other people in my position who don't know the next little step and stuff like that, how to actually go about getting published. And in fact, we published one a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you can see that. See my face has changed to that lady's face. Look at that. Well, that lady's actually called Kathleen, and she's the mother of a friend of mine, and she wrote her memoirs, and her daughter, so the friend of mine, wanted to get them published. So during lockdown, that's a little project that we did. So that's now out in print, available on Amazon. And I did all the editing for it, and again the design of the covers and all that sort of stuff as well. Obviously got it printed. I send the printing out to the printers that I've got an association with, and yeah, that's it really. That's that's that. So on Sunday I won't be reading from either of those. I'll be reading from another one that I've got in the go at the moment.
Okay, well, we'll come back to everybody once we found out what how you got into publishing and writing and stuff in a moment. So I'm going to go to Colin next, because Colin is he's our techie guy for Sunday night or Sunday afternoons, and he's has an IT background, and he's been extremely helpful ever since he turned up at Fiction Fix when it was in a pub, and he said, "How can I help?" So that it was absolutely great, because we've become friends as a result of working on Fiction Fix together. And I mean, Colin, how did you become involved in writing in the first place?
I always enjoyed writing short stories when I was at school. And it was an easy way of getting through an English lesson when everybody persuaded the English teacher just to let us write a story. So I started then. So that was when I was about 10 or 11 years old. But I started taking it more seriously. Actually, no, that's not correct. I started writing out of interest for myself about 20 years ago. And I've got several things on the go, and several things sitting there, which will probably never be opened again because of that terrible. Long story short, I wrote my first one when I was drunk, but that's the way it is. But I only started taking writing seriously when I met Helen. Fiction Fix, and that was a pure out of the blue chance, in that I was in this pub where this Fiction Fix show was being run, got talking to one of the barmen, who pointed me in the direction of the poster Helen had in the pub, and I turned up on the following Sunday night, and that's how I started. Yes. And I started taking it seriously around then, which would be how long ago?
4 years ago.
That would be about right, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Because I'd been running Fiction Fix for about a year, I think, when you turned up. And I didn't realise that you hadn't, because I've got to say, Colin has got loads and loads of stories. So he must
I do.
I figure he must be beavering away in the background there.
A lot of those were written simply out of self-interest.
Yeah.
Not for publishing purposes or anything like that. But the idea is now that with Helen's help, I might be able to bang them into shape and produce something like a coherent narrative for some of the shorter stories. So that's part of the plan for the future. So yes, that's how I got into it. That's how I have come to start taking it seriously rather than just as a hobby. and I'll be looking into the self-publishing aspects of things with Helen's help later on.
Yes. So I have to say, I have got one of Colin's books to read. I've read quite a bit of it and really enjoying it. So
Thank you.
it's yes, it's definitely a project there. So do you want to just briefly tell us which books you've got already, sort of, at least in an initial draft?
An initial draft. Well, that will be the only one that I've got really is the Julie Jones story.
All
Is there
right.
anybody there? That's the one that's complete.
Yes, that's the one I've got.
That's the one you've got.
Yeah.
I do have others. There's one that's in the sort of espionage genre. There's a cyberpunk shortish story. Couple of science fiction short stories. Lots of fantasy stories. And so on. But I'm also writing one at the moment set entirely in the real world with no magic or anything like that. Yes. But it's a bit of an iffy subject to get into, so I shan't at this point.
Right. Okay, that's fair enough. Right. So
it's not a showstopper. It's not a showstopper, but I think it might be a bit uncomfortable.
Okay. Right. That's fair enough. Okie doke. Leanne, tell us how you became interested in writing.
Well, I think like everybody else, we all wrote stories at school, and someone said, "Oh, you're quite good at this," and then you think, "Oh, one day," you know. I said when I was going to retire and become an author originally when I was like 10 or something, and then I did my degree because I was single mum with 2 children, and I thought I've got to just do something to get somewhere in life, make some money, and stand on my own 2 feet. And I was going to be a teacher, you know, just get a degree, be a teacher. But yeah, things sort of changed for me, where I was a bit more stable, and now I'm a bit more in life where I can actually say, you know, I'm a mum to more children now, so I'm at home with lots of children, 5. So I might well go for my career as a writer now because I'm at home anyway. So in between looking after children, so I've always been interested in it, but it's becoming a bit more of a reality now that I've done the master's degree. I'm starting. It feels quite good because I never thought I'd be at this stage this early. So it doesn't mean, you know, sometimes you feel like I've got to get it done because I'm running out of time. Whereas, you know, for me, it's like, well, I'm on borrowed time anyway because I weren't going to start that adventure till later in life. So I've got all the time now. So that does help because I do find this. I always have so many projects going on in my head, and I've got to get them all done like this year. It's all got to be done this year. But, you know, knowing that I'm starting this journey early, I can sort of relax a little bit because I have got, you know, time. But yeah, while I was doing the master's degree, that's I suppose when it really hit home for me, because when I was doing all the academic essays and stuff, I was getting okay grades, but then when I was doing short stories, my grades were loads better, and my teacher was just like, you've got to seriously do this. So I think that helped because I can be a bit of a self-doubter, and that really did encourage me, knowing, you know, you've got someone experienced going, yes, this is brilliant, love it. It did help. I have sent quite a lot off and had, you know, loads of rejections. I have to keep going through that. And each time I do say to myself, I'm not going to let it affect me. I'm just going to carry on. But I do find I have like 3 days of I've just abandoned writing completely, have a bit of a sulk, and then I get back to it, which I've got to learn to deal with it. You know, I can't keep doing that, but I do. So, yeah, always wanted to write, not sure what I wanted to write. So nowadays I just let my heart go. And generally, when people ask me what do you write, and I sort of instead of saying crime fiction, because really that's probably what I do write, most of the time I go into too much detail of I'm writing about a story of blood, guts, gore, rapes, prostitution, and people are just like, what's wrong with this woman? And so I think, you know, next time someone asks, I'm just going to say crime fiction and leave them to guess. So, can be my stuff can be a little bit so but it's where my inspiration comes from. Normally what's happening on the telly, what I hear in newspapers, you know, radio, something will spark something, and I just think I've got to write about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've mainly concentrated, I think, on short stories at the moment.
At the moment, I have generally completed quite a few short stories and sent them all off to competitions, and the ones that I've sort of exhausted in competitions will go into trying to do an anthology of like collaboration of short stories. Ones that get published, then they're published. I can put, you know, when I go for the novel, I can say I've had these published here, because I'm hoping that will help get the novel done. But I'm about 75% finished with the novel, I'd say. But that's taken a lot more time than I originally planned, because it's been so much research. I've had to interview loads of people, historical research. I've had to talk to ex-police officers. I'm trying to get into court so I can actually watch a court case, and so it's all very exciting. But you know, I am trying. You know, I'm really a full-time mum as well, so
you've got to fit it around that. But luckily, it is something you can fit around it.
I can, so I can say to Tom, just watch them while I go and interview someone on a Saturday, or you know, Zoom chat in the evening with somebody, or you know, so I can, you know. Manageable.
So, you talking about going into court. I remember my friend Julia from Slough High School. She said, "Will you come with me to the Old Bailey? I want to go and watch a case." So we were about 16 or so. Anyway, we got the train down to London, maybe a little bit older than that, and we went to the Old Bailey, and she said, "Right, come on, let's go and ask about this." She went over to the doorman, and she said, "We want a really nice juicy case, you know." And so the guy said, "Well, if you go up those steps and through that door, there's a really juicy one in there." So we went in, and it was about this gay chap who'd murdered his lover and stabbed him and thrown acid all over him and everything. It was really juicy.
Gosh, yes.
Yeah. So,
so I'm hoping I can get something like it, just so I can see. I've been watching them online. I've had to print off loads of you can get them like just written copies,
transcripts.
Transcript, that's what I mean. And I've had to print all those off and read them, and exhausting.
So are you how many short stories would you say you've done? Because you've read some at Fiction Fix, haven't you?
I've probably done about 18 now.
Gosh.
So I just finished like chapter 22 of my novel, and then I had this had to just put it to one side and get this short story down, and then I chucked that to Miss Lexia. So that was my last one, and that it's about 18, I'd say. But they're all, like I say, they're all like out there at the moment, circulating, and I think I've got 4 aside that didn't do so well, so just keep going for the next couple of years.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you basically where I am. I brought out Flood Tide initially. That was the first one that I did, and that is a very large, fat novel, epic. I then had a couple of short stories, and I thought, well, I ought to bring out some more books, because you know, the more books you can get out there, I feel, the more presence you have as an author. And So I published The Stallion as a novelette, and that's probably about the nearest thing I've got to a YA story. I don't think it's very YA though. And then this is She, which is a collection with, again, a novelette, a time travel novelette, and 2 short horror stories. And a lot of my stories come from dreams. So I wake up and I might wake up in the middle of the night, and that particularly happened with The Stallion. My husband woke up about 6 o'clock in the morning, and he said, he came in and knocked on the door, and he said, oh, you're in here. So I said, yes, I woke up about 3 hours ago, and I had this dream. And I thought, well, if I don't write it down now, I will forget it. So I wrote it down, and it became The Stallion. And the thing is, I've now got ideas for sequels for all 3 of those. So hopefully I'm going to be able to follow that up at some point. I got into writing myself. Well, I've always written ever since I was about 13 or 14. And I started off writing some fan fiction, which was fun, but not very practical. And but the thing is, it's a good thing to cut your teeth on, because it's actually harder to do to write with someone else's characters than it is to write with your own, because you have total control if it's you, but you don't have that control if it's fan fiction. So anyway, I then spent various times, various things happened. I went out to work, left school, went out to work, and while I was at my first job, I had the dream that led to Flood Tide, and so I started writing that, and I got up to about 23,000 words, just writing in spare moments and typing it up at lunch times on the office typewriter. And I remember saying to Chris, my boss, oh, would it be okay if I borrowed the typewriter at lunchtime? And he said, yeah, that's fine. I said, well, I'm writing a book actually. And he went, oh yes, I'd really love to write a book. But it seemed he didn't have any actual ideas of what he'd like to write. So, anyway, so when I started writing Flood Tide again, I'd actually had 4 miscarriages, well, 2 miscarriages initially, and I started writing, got really, really involved in it, and it was really therapeutic for me. And during that period, I was very productive, and I wrote loads of stuff, and I'm now getting around, like Nigel and Debbie and Colin, all of you really, I'm now getting around to publishing all that stuff. And yeah, it's a very interesting journey, but it's taken me 40 years to publish Flood Tide, so I think that's probably about a record.
Yeah, you beat me.
So well, I had that idea when I was 21, and I published it when I was 9, so that was 7 years ago. But as I say, I have now got ideas for a second and third novel. The third one is a bit vague at the moment, and I did have a title for it, but then I decided I'd nick that for the title for the second anyway, because I like the title for that better. So yeah, and I write science fiction, fantasy, and the occasional horror story. So can everybody say, Leanne, you said crime fiction, more or less?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, and a little bit of sort of social and very keen observation of people. And I would say there's that sort of social commentary.
Yeah. So realism, maybe, might be able to yeah.
Definitely. So can we all go around and say what we write? And I think there's quite a few science fiction writers in the room.
Yeah, I write, well, I mean, so far it's been fantasy.
Yeah.
That's the series of books that I've written. The other novelette that I've got on Kindle, that's well, I call it a ghostly murder mystery, and that's for young adults. But my daughter insists that my writing is probably more suited to adult writing, because I do make it challenging for kids. I don't, I mean, I was an avid reader as a child, devour books, and both my kids, more so my daughter than my son probably, but are very, very good readers. So that's why I wanted something challenging but not too dark for them when they were, which was why I sort of started the books really. But I've got ideas for some adult books, and I've got like a whole folder of Deb's writing, and it's got all these things that I've started, and ideas. Most of them are ideas for adult stories. So I'm hoping next foray into a novel will be written for adults. And I like the idea of crime, because I love crime. I love crime novels, but I'd realised that one of the things is you've got to do your research, because people will see right through it. Whereas with fantasy, you can kind of get away with stuff.
Yeah, and there is a certain amount of research that you still need to do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you can't make it too airy fairy, if you like, because again, it's got to be grounded in realism.
Reality. Yeah.
So because otherwise, kids can't associate with it. So so I mean, one of the things that I quite liked was a review I had of the first book, which was by somebody from the States actually, and they said that she was like, my main character, like a Disney princess, but very real. So it's like that was quite nice, because that's what I wanted. I wanted her to be, because she's half human and half elf, so she would have that kind of really realistic sort of feel about her. So
definitely. Colin.
Yes. Well, I do follow my interests, and that's mostly science fiction and fantasy. Though I have written some supernatural tales, and I'm concentrating on one at the moment that is set entirely in the real world. So it mentions places that exist, not just made up. And that's about it, really. As I say, I'm a bit wary of going into the subject matter of that, because it's a bit iffy, I think. But that's by the by. I have mentioned it to Claire, Helen rather. So it's one of those things that's percolating. But Helen earlier on mentioned that she gets a lot of her ideas from dreams, and I actually wrote a very short intro based on a dream that I had about a dragon sitting in a tree. There it is. But this was another very much set in the real world, where people have jobs and so on, but the dragons have come from somewhere which was never explained in the dream, so I don't know where they've come from. And they've essentially taken over the show. And instead of working for the man now, the humans are working for the dragons and whatever empires they've built.
Nice one.
So this centers now, the idea of the story is it centers around a resistance movement. So there'll be a lot of espionage and code words and stuff like that, so that the human resistance can try to overthrow the dragons wherever they've come from. I have no idea how that will work out.
I think I've had that with my current project, but we'll talk about that later. Nigel.
Well, I'm a little bit like I think when Leanne was saying that she has these ideas and then turns them into like short stories and stuff. Well, I have these ideas. I think that doesn't fit in the novel I'm writing at the moment, so I'll start another one. And so that's how come I've got quite a few on the go. Jennifer is a crime thriller, but if you also think about the Mission Impossible type things, there's a lot of people pretending to be other people in it. Let's put it like that. But there's an underlying crime thriller thing going on there. A novel called Gone is set in the 1980s and is about a missing girl who literally just goes missing. And I was a police officer during the 1980s, so I'm pulling a lot of, sort of like from that. I spent 10 years in the East End of London as a police officer, so that's really where that one's based. The one I'm going to be reading on Sunday is actually a historical science fiction.
Fabulous.
So it goes from the late 1800s right the way up to the present day. Yeah, so there's a bit of science fiction stuff going in there, but that one's set in Africa. So there's a lot to do with the anti-apartheid and the mines and the colonialism and all that sort of bits and pieces going on in that one. So my genres really are sort of like all over. I've even got an R18 one on the go at the moment. So that's not for the bottom shelf by any means. Top shelf, and you need step ladders to get up to it. So that's another one that's on the go as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really sort of like either things that have happened or things that in some way have influenced me, and then just put them into put pen to paper if you like, or fingers to keyboards these days, let's say. But yeah, a lot of science fiction, you sort of like stuff and thrillers, that type of genre, really.
I think I definitely what a friend of ours calls genre bender. I just like lumping things together, and there will be various elements from all different genres.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got another one on the go that's actually all to do with interdimensional. Because obviously, we think we're in a universe. The latest science really sort of says we're part of a multiverse.
Yes.
And so that one's actually called the God dimension. And that's traveling between the dimensions, basically.
Yes,
and
that's a bit like,
they're explaining a lot of the things that we experience in this dimension, but could actually be explained by the fact they're from another dimension. For example, the babushka lady who was present at the JF Kennedy assassination, which is real. I mean, that happened, but nobody knows who she is or where she went to, or where nobody ever seen her since. But there's footage of her actually being there, and then she just disappears. So could that be explained within my book? Get it.
Right. Okay. So now what we ought to do is start talking about what people are working on at the moment, and maybe also what they're going to be reading on Sunday at Fiction Fix. So Debbie, would you like to start the ball rolling on that?
Yeah, sure. I'm currently working on as I said, the fourth.
On a sec.
Sorry.
I must excuse myself for a minute. I will be back shortly.
Oh, right. I'll send you a chat message.
Right.
In the meantime. Yeah. Sorry, Debbie.
That's okay. I'm currently working on the fourth book in the series. I'm about probably around halfway through it. I've been working on it. It's been taking too long. I'd thought with lockdown that I might actually finish it.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Oh my gosh, it's like the inspiration just dried up with whatever COVID had going on, because I think I get a lot of inspiration from interacting with people, because obviously you draw from other people, don't you? And
of course you do, yeah.
Just being out and about and stuff like that. So when we were really locked down, I just lost the inspiration. But this year, I've touched wood, it seems to have started regenerating, because getting out and walking, and I've managed to see my kids a couple of times because they're both down in London, and you know, and stuff like that. So that's really helped. But yeah, so as I said, I'm probably about halfway through it now. And that's the final book in this particular series. So I was working on it yesterday. Today I haven't really felt up to it. I wasn't feeling all that great today. So I'm going to get cracking again tomorrow. So I finished a chapter yesterday, started the next chapter. So that was a relief. And this one, I know exactly where it's going. So
yeah, no, that sounds really good.
I'm a bit of an organic writer in that I know where I start, I know where I'm ending up, but the journey in between is as much sometimes a surprise to me as it is to somebody else. So
that actually sounds...
you know, but luckily I've got people who read my stuff for me, who have been, you know, they're not just proofreaders, they'll give me good
feedback.
And I need that sometimes. I don't always agree with them. And so I will have the final kind of say in it because it's my book. But if it's grammatically incorrect, or it's, you know, there's typos or whatever like that, or there's a continuity error, then obviously I'll pick up on that. But sometimes we'll have a bit of a discussion, and it's based on semantics often, you know, it's like, yeah, do you say this or do you say that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's been really good. And my daughter, who's better at English than I am, really, she's my kind of final editor, and she's brutally honest with me. So that's been really good.
I think you mentioned that she got a degree in English.
No, she started a degree in English.
Oh, right.
And with creative writing, and hated it.
Oh, well, it's a tall order if that happens, isn't it?
I think, yeah, she was at Goldsmiths, and she just said she felt it wasn't value for money. That was her sort of thing. And she kind of, after a year and a bit, and she's just completing a psychology degree, which she said, because that can be useful in all sorts of ways. But she's very creative as well, so you know, it's good that she, you know, she's quite critical. She reads a lot of highbrow stuff, so I quite trust her to kind of be a final on the final product, really.
Fabulous. Nigel.
Well, as I say, at the moment, the one I really want to press forward and get finished is Jennifer. I had a problem with that, in as much as I'd always wanted the front cover to represent the primary character, okay, the main character. But when I came to describe her in the book, I then realized that whatever description I used and would repeatedly use within the book, I would then have to find somebody that matched that to put on the front cover. Whereas I thought, if I actually find somebody to put on the front cover, then is all I need to do is to describe that person. Right. So that's why I
follow your logic.
Found my model, got my model to come down, did all the photographs and stuff, and now I can get back on it and actually start describing what she looks like, her mannerisms and all that sort of bits and pieces.
Yeah.
Because I'd mentioned it a few times, and then suddenly thought, I'm gonna struggle to find somebody like this. So now I can actually just go back and alter those little bits and pieces that I haven't got too far with. The one I'm going to be reading from on Sunday, though, is probably the most. No, it's not the most infant one, but I've done quite a bit on it. But it's the one that's set in Africa.
Right.
And it's the reading on Sunday will be with regard to an episode that happened in this young girl's life, which is a moment when she starts to realise she might be a little bit special.
Right. Okay, that sounds like a good introduction to it.
I forgot to say what I'm reading on Sunday.
Yeah.
You did say what I'm reading on Sunday.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be
That's fine. We could have come back to it
Oh,
anyway.
sorry, I wasn't sure whether I should have said it at the time.
No, it's fine.
I'm
Carry
going
on.
to be reading from my second book. Don't know if you can see that.
Yep.
It's called The Dragonflyers, and the excerpt I'm reading is from chapter 12 actually, and it's about it's called Healing Hands, the chapter, and Lizzie Longton, who's my main character, she has an episode with with a number of other people with a particularly terrifying creature that comes out of the sky and begins to attack them. So it's what happens at that point
As a result of that.
So yeah.
Fabulous. I shall look forward to hearing that. Yeah. Leanne.
Helen,
What are you working on at the moment?
So the novel, it's set 1986 and current time. So each chapter, one chapter's 1986, and then we come present.
Oh, so it's a double time level story.
Yeah, but it does come together after a couple of chapters, and then it's all, then it's all now. So basically, it's about a girl, 1986, is raped by a celebrity, a bit like Rolf Harris sort of character. The chapter now is of this university professor, and it sort of intermingles what happens after she's raped and all these police interviews and stuff in 1986, and she ends up pregnant, and she puts the baby up for adoption. And so this story of now is basically of a daughter, and the story comes together because they meet. The girl who was adopted didn't want to know about her birth parents, but now she's 35 and she just suddenly has something happens in her life where she wants to find out, and she sort of finds out about her mum was very young and who it was, and wants to take it further. And so yeah, it really does keep going from there. Really, I haven't really given anything away because you've got to have those first couple of chapters to get the story going, and it's their fight for justice. And there's so many characters so involved, just one tiny event that happens in 1986, so many people are involved, press, everybody. So I'm trying to do it from a different well, it's mainly the perspective of Sarah, who's in 1986, and Jessica, who's now the daughter. It's mainly their perspective, but I'm jumping in quite a few other people's perspectives, like nans and aunties and journalists, and trying to do everybody and to give it a wider, sort of broader, with all the different feelings that are involved in it. So yeah, it's so complicated that if I mess up one tiny detail in present time, I then have to go back and change what happened in 1986. So I can't. Sorry, I'm fabricating right. So, just one day, trying to get it. But I'm having to order things like Girl magazine just to see what she would have been reading.
Right, yeah.
It's like I say, quite a heavy project. But in between, I've been writing short stories on sort of to do with women who've been murdered recently. So 3 women are in a car going to a vigil for some woman who's been murdered in London, and it's just a bit of a complicated journey. Basically, it sounds like nothing, but
it'll be something. I know it'll be something.
Stuck in a car, so it sounds really dull, but there's it's sort of metaphors all happening everywhere. So yeah.
Right. It sounds great.
It does, yeah, it does. I mean, I know Leanne has really got a handle on these sort of the social commentary side of things, and you know, she likes to observe people. She's definitely the sort of person who might sit in a cafe and watch people. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. And that's what I can totally relate to what Debbie was saying with the lockdown. Initially, I was finding it such a hard time because just going to Tesco, just a trip to Tesco will spark something, and I'll get home and I've got to write how that bloke picked up that can of dog food and smelt it or something. I've got to add that in. Because, you know, people wouldn't, but most of the time, like, you're out in society and people say, you know, people couldn't even write this stuff. And that's where the stories come from, is the things you think you couldn't even write. You've just seen
Things
it happen.
that are really weird.
I've got to write about it. So, yeah.
It's true.
Right. Colin, what are you working
Hi
on
there.
now?
Well, there is this modern day story that I'm working on, but I'm also trying to get my ducks in a row to link some of the fantasy stories that I've written.
Right.
It seems there are rumors of war going on in what I simply call the Southlands.
Yeah.
So it's far removed from that environment where the actual conflict is happening.
Yeah.
But news travels and effects spill over. Yes. So some of the main characters become tangentially involved.
Yeah.
In this war. One of the main characters, however, is directly involved because she was a noblewoman. And the heir apparent to the duchy that was invaded. And she was basically confined to a convent.
Yeah.
Yes. So it follows her story and how she will then recruit some of the other characters to regain her own kingdom.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's the fantasy side of things.
Right.
And that's roughly what I'm working on. So I need to seed each story with common rumors that people
Right.
can
Yeah. So that's a
and then go,
continuity thing,
"Aha."
isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's what I need to do. To do that, though, I think I need a map of the world.
Right.
So I can see what's happening where.
Yeah.
And that's another little technical project of mine. You see, I am an unashamed nerd.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm an unashamed nerd. I play fantasy role-playing games, science fiction war games, all sorts of things. Yes. So
we got some looping going on. Can you hear an echo?
We do sound like that, yes.
Yeah. Ah, okay. All right.
It seems to have stopped now.
Okay. All right. That's fine.
Right. So that's the idea. And on Sunday I will be reading a little more about the boy Milo.
Yeah.
Who again becomes tangentially involved.
Yeah.
In some of these events.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So the thing that I'm working on is the Zardoth Imperative, and I have been working on this for ages, on and off. I came up with the idea when I was about 23, and it's basically a story about the Zardothi who come from the planet Zardoth, and they are space mercenaries. And basically they are, how can I put it? They trade their services for food and equipment and things that they need. They don't have a system of money, but they do have a system of trading. And you know, being a good negotiator is actually a really good thing within that setup. But I've had a bit of a problem because I had an artist booked to do a cover for me, and she's had a series of domestic disasters. So And it's one of those things that I think I need a painted cover for. I don't think that there are the stock photos to, because of the fact that it's the Zardathi, and I've invented them. They, you know, I need to have a painted cover, but it could be one that where the background is set up as a sort of repeating sort of setup. But yeah, so that's a problem at the moment. But during the first lockdown, I worked very, very hard on the first story. Well, about 1.5 of the 2 stories, because originally I decided probably 3 or 4 years ago that I was going to have to split the book because it got so enormous and it was getting very large. So I thought, well, actually, that's quite a good thing because there's a natural stopping place between parts 2 and 3. Part 1 is quite short, it's only about 4 chapters. So I've incorporated that in the first book, which is called Discovery. And then part 2 is about the so it's the second, or the second part is sorry, it's the third part of the book, but the second book, and it's going to be called Clanship. It was going to be called Flagship, but I decided I would go to Clanship because it's much more appropriate for the story. So that's where we are with that. But I'm on the editing part at the moment. I've just done a massive world build on the second, well, the first book actually, and I decided that it'd be fun to have my one of my Zardathi crews marooned on a planet in orbit around a brown dwarf, and all the problems that entailed. So I had to do a bit of research into brown dwarfs and everything, and the type of planets that they have. And so that's where we are with that really at the moment. And I'm really hoping I can get it out, and I want to bring out the 2 very close together because I think that keeps the continuity going. And I have got about 7 stories for that particular I don't know, with life, well, that particular series anyway. Some of them will not be very large, some of them will be quite big, enormous, in fact, epic. So, you know, they will vary quite a bit, but I always think, you know, a story has to go to its natural length, and you can't get more mileage out of something like that than you would, you know, you can't sort of pad it out to make it longer. It's got to be, you know, a complete story. Yeah, if the story ends there, it ends there, and you can pick it up in the next book, but you don't want to be saying, oh well, actually I'll incorporate this bit, because obviously if you're a self-publisher, you've got to think, well, actually that would make it very expensive for readers to buy, and they might not buy it then.
Yeah.
So you really do need to take all those things into account. So I will be reading a little bit from Clanship this Sunday afternoon. I've worked out the piece that I'm going to read. It's from chapter 7, and it's got about 3 scenes, 3 shortish scenes in it. So I think it will be quite a fun sort of, it follows on from previous readings. So anyway, right, well, how are we doing on time? We're about an hour now. I'm going to
we have been streaming for exactly 1 hour.
Right, so I think we should now stop the stream.
Yep.
And stop the recording, and then we'll I'll just close the session down then. And so I really hope that you will enjoy watching this and finding out a little bit more about some of our lovely writers, and that you will be able to also join us on Sunday afternoon, 4 o'clock, for Fiction Fix online. And we will be streaming to the Finger on the Pulse. And so if you're not a member of that, then you need to join PDQ. There are rules to read and a few questions to answer, and then we can let you in, and then you can watch it live, or alternatively, you can pick it up later. It will probably be on, I'm not sure if it still appears, but I may be able to paste it into my timeline. But also we do record it, and we do put the recording up on the Zoom recording up on YouTube. So for that, you need to go to my Helen Claire Gould YouTube channel, but I usually post it in the Finger on the Pulse anyway, so you might not need to go there. So this has been Helen Claire Gould and my techie guy, Colin A. Brett, he writes as, and 3 authors from the Fiction Fix stable, as it were. We have Debbie Daley, Leanne Rogers, and Nigel Battley. And from all of us to all of you, thank you very much for watching, and we hope you've enjoyed this expose of what writers get up to. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Good night, all.
Right. Oh, no, hang on a minute.
We're still here.
I pressed the wrong thing. Okay, recording. Stop recording.